On this day, in 532 AD, the deadly Nika Riots broke out in the city of Constantinople, which almost toppled the government of Emperor Justinian I. On this day in the year 532 AD, the Nika Riots broke out in the city of Constantinople following a quarrel between supporters of different chariot teams, the Blues and the Greens, in the Hippodrome, which eventually escalated into serious violence that almost toppled the emperor. The Nika Riots, otherwise known as the Nika Revolt or Nika Sedition, took place against Emperor Justinian I in Constantinople over the course of a week in 532 AD. They were the most violent riots in the city's history, with nearly half of Constantinople being burned or destroyed and tens of thousands of people killed, used by politicians in a futile attempt to overthrow the emperor. The ancient Roman and Byzantine empires had well-developed associations known as demes, which supported the different factions or teams under which competitors in certain sporting events took part. This was particularly true of chariot racing. There were initially 4 major factional teams of chariot racing, differentiated by the color of the uniform in which they competed. The colors were also worn by their supporters. These were the Blues, the Greens, the Reds, and the Whites, although by the Byzantine era the only teams with any influence were the Blues and Greens. Emperor Justinian I was a supporter of the Blues. In 531, some members of the Blues and Greens had been arrested for murder in connection with deaths that occurred during rioting after a recent chariot race. The murderers were to be executed, and most of them were. But on January 10, 532, 2 of them, a Blue and a Green, escaped and were taking refuge in the sanctuary of a church surrounded by an angry mob. Justinian was nervous. He was in the midst of negotiating with the Persians over peace in the east at the end of the Iberian War, and now he faced a potential crisis in his city. Facing this, he declared that a chariot race would be held on January 13th and commuted the sentences to imprisonment. The Blues and the Greens responded by demanding that the 2 men be pardoned entirely. On January 13, 532, a tense and angry populace arrived at the Hippodrome for the races. The Hippodrome was next to the palace complex, and thus Justinian could watch from the safety of his box in the palace and preside over the races. From the start, the crowd had been hurling insults at Justinian. By the end of the day, at race 22, the partisan chants had changed from blue or green to a unified Nika. Nika meaning win, victory, or conquer, and the crowds broke out and began to assault the palace. For the next 5 days, the palace was under siege. The fires that started during the tumult resulted in the destruction of much of the city, including the city's foremost church, the Hagia Sophia, which Justinian would later rebuild. Some of the senators saw this as an opportunity to overthrow Justinian, as they were opposed to his new taxes and his lack of support for the nobility.